Welcome everybody to Brown, Bearded, and Disabled. I am your host, Jaime Torres. I'm going to be telling you stories of how I became disabled and how I'm learning to live life with my newfound disability. Welcome back everybody to episode 2 of Brown, Bearded, and Disabled. We're going to continue telling the story of how I suffered my brain bleed and how I was placed in a medically induced coma and my coma experience and how I got out of it. But before I start that story, go ahead and check out episode 1 if you haven't checked it out already. It's available on SoundCloud and YouTube. You can search me under Brown, Bearded, and Disabled, and I should pop up. You should see my ugly mug with the hat and glasses, all cartoon-like. But yeah, go ahead and check it out if you haven't checked it out. And before I continue telling the story of my coma experience, I just wanted to clarify that in the first episode, I never explained why I hit my head with that baking pan. It just sounds like I was in the middle of an argument and I was emotionally unstable and hit my head. But no, I was emotionally unstable, but what had happened was, the reason why I hit my head was, if you remember, I had that buzzing sensation in the back of my head, and it was super intense and very unbearable. I mean, it wasn't painful, it was just very intense, like I just wanted it to stop. And in that time and moment, I thought that if I hit my head with that baking pan, it would make it go away. No surprise, it didn't work. It just made my head hurt more and scare Amy and made me look more like a crazy person. So yeah, it makes no sense. There's no logic to it, but it made sense to me at the time. So yeah, that's why I hit my head with the baking pan. And I just also wanted to say that I am grateful that Amy came back and got me the help that I needed. I mean, I wouldn't be here right now telling this story if she wouldn't have come back. Timing was everything, and not I would have been found dead in the backyard in California in my underwear. Yeah, that would have sucked. Well, anyways, Amy, thank you if you're listening. You forever have a special place in my heart. Thank you for saving me. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get this episode started with my coma experience. So, I'm in the back of an ambulance. They take me to the hospital where they put me in a medically induced coma. Now, let me explain why they put me in a coma. So when I hit my head with the baking pan, they gave me a CAT scan and MRI to see, if I had brain swelling. Well, upon looking at the results, that's when they noticed I had a brain bleed happening on the pons portion of my brain, a brain stem. And that's why they had to put me in a coma to bring my blood pressure down so they could stop the bleeding. And like I said, I don't remember any of this, but what I do remember next is I don't know if you guys seen the movie RoboCop. When they kill Officer Murphy and they turn him into a RoboCop and they turn him on. Well, it kind of felt like that. Like I was alert, but I felt like I was floating in space. It was weird, like a weird slow float. Stars were super distant and dim, and I thought I was dead. I'm like, okay, there's no heaven, there's no hell. Your subconscious just floats, That's what I thought. And there I was. It seemed like forever. I thought I was out for days, but it was only a day and a half is what they told me. But that day and a half, like I said, felt like days. And that's when my life did flash before my eyes. I was able to recollect like pretty much everything. Memories I thought I'd forgotten, I was remembering. I was like reliving moments. I was making myself laugh, cracking jokes, and yeah, there I was. Nothing was happening. I was just there in a slow float in what felt like space. Almost like the Upside Down from Stranger Things, but there was stars like very far away. And nothing was happening. And so what happens here? I knew I wasn't dead when I started hearing voices around me. But here's the thing. I didn't know that I lost my hearing at that time. I just heard mumbles like, and and I could distinguish whether it was male or female, and I was just surrounded by all this humming. I knew they were talking, but I couldn't listen because I lost my hearing. And that's when I was like, oh shit, I'm not dead. I'm alive. I can hear these people. And I tried to open my eyes, and I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move anything in my body, and I started freaking out internally. I'm like, oh shit, I'm never going to be the same again. Like, this is serious. I can't open my eyes, but I know there's people around me. And like I said, I can distinguish the voices. I knew when it was a doctor, and I knew when it was like a female or relative or something, because the humming was very different from me person to person. And I tried to open my eyes, and nothing. So I felt like I was in a waiting room in a dark, dark black abyss, like a waiting room, just waiting for something to happen. I didn't know I was in a coma. I just couldn't open my eyes. And Amy said that she pressed a pen to my bed nail really hard, and she had no reaction, little to no reaction. Like, I barely even flinched or anything. And it was the next day when my cousin Carlos came down. Well, a whole bunch of my cousins came down, like in a little caravan, if you will, from Washington State to California, because I don't know what the doctor said. I mean, me being in a coma, they assumed the worst, that they didn't know I was going to wake up, or if I was even wake up at all. So everybody prepared for the worst, and my cousins came down, and like I said, they prepared for the worst just in case I didn't make it through, because I didn't know what was happening. And like I said, I was in my coma, and my cousin Carlos came into the room to visit, and he asked the doctor if he could put headphones on me. And the doctor was like, I don't advise it. He just had traumatic brain injury, yada, all that stuff. And my cousin was being very hard-headed and just didn't listen. And he just put headphones on me. He ended up putting headphones on me and played one of our favorite songs. It's a song by My Morning Jacket, and the song is called Wordless Chorus. Well, when he put them on, I couldn't hear the music. All of a sudden, like I'm back in the darkness, in the abyss, in space, whatever. I felt like it felt like space. Nothing happened, it felt like days, but it was really only a day and a half. But that day and a half, like I said, felt like days, and nothing was happening. And all of a sudden, I feel like this tug and pull from the left shoulder, like I was being brought up, almost like a beam, like aliens, when they abduct. Yeah, I felt like I was getting sucked up to the left side, like my left part of my body was getting sucked up, and I'm like, oh shit, like I'm going to heaven, or something's happening. Like, oh shit, maybe I'm dying, or I'm going to the light or something. Well, it started getting brighter. I'm like, oh shit, there's a light that they always talk about. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I am dead. And before I knew it, I opened up my eyes, and I was singing along to that Wordless Chorus song by My Morning Jacket. And I came out of my coma to My Morning Jacket. It was surreal. I was singing the chorus, and in my head, I'm thinking I'm on key, on right pitch. And no, I probably sounded, I didn't know I lost my voice at the time, but I did. And I probably sounded like a goose getting strangled. Like, oh, it was not, it wasn't good. But I woke up singing from my coma, and I saw my cousin's eyes just widen up, and he was just so shocked. So was I. I'm like looking down. I'm trying to look and move, and like I can barely move my head back like to the sides. I can't move my arms very well, or anything at that point. I felt like a newborn baby. That's when my family started coming in. They were all excited, and because I made it through. Everyone thought, I put them all through hell. They all thought maybe there was a big possibility that I wasn't gonna make it, and they said I was 1 in 400,000 that has a brain bleed like that, and I was a lucky one. Well, I don't know why I can't be lucky like that with the lotto, but I was lucky in that end, that I made it through. So everybody was pumped. I made it through. I woke up. My cousin took the headphones back. Everyone was excited, and that's when they tried to explain what happened to me. I could barely hear people. Like, I really lost my hearing. All I could hear was like a high screech, high pitched sound. Best best way I was able to describe it is, if you folks have seen the movie The Matrix, you know, when the screen has that screensaver, you know, it's like all green is coming down the screen, the sound it makes. That's what my ears felt like. That's all I could hear, and vaguely hear some words. And my eyes were messed up. They were crooked. Like they had double vision. That's what they said. And I still have some problems with my vision from then, but it was really bad at that time. They would have to put a patch on my eye, and they would have to alternate every 2 hours, keep one eye closed and keep one eye open over and over. But when I opened up my eyes and I started, coming to, I realized that, oh, this is very, very bad. I'm never going to be the same. I couldn't move like I wanted to. Like, I was hooked up to everything. You can imagine, both arms, feeding tube, breathing tube. I looked like a science experiment, like Wolverine or something, with no metal claws, unfortunately. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I am a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. Now, let me explain. So, when I had my, the brain bleed and I had that buzzing sensation, that day wasn't the first time I felt that buzzing. I still remember the first time I felt that weird feeling in the back of my head. And it was the summer of 2007. I was going through a rough time with my ex at the time. We had a child, and 2.5 years later, I found out that that kid wasn't mine. My daughter wasn't mine. I got the DNA results, and it said 0% probability of, that she was not my daughter. So I just remember getting super angry. I was heartbroken, betrayed, angry. My blood pressure was just shooting high, skyrocketing, and I could just feel my ears hot and throbbing. And then that's when the buzzing started for the first time. And I remember getting out of my car, and I'm like freaking out because I never felt anything like this before. And I'm like, oh, this is horrible. It was unbearable. Instead of hitting myself with the baking pan, at that time I hit the side of an RV with my fists. I was punching it really hard. And I stopped when my hands were hurting really bad and throbbing, and it made that buzzing feeling go away. I just, must have been some relief or some sort of release. And it went away, and I never thought about it. Now, flash forward 2 years later, probably like 3 years later, I had that feeling again, and it was basically because of stress. So I was working in a stressful work environment, and my job was stressful, and yeah, it happened a few more times, and every time I went to the doctor or got hospitalized, they would always tell me, oh, it's stress related and you need to quit your job and yada, yada, yada. But they never knew to look for a brain bleed. I mean, why would they? They had all they could think of was everything was stress related, that I'll be fine. And all those times, I was probably bleeding, and all they could tell me was it was just stress related. Yeah, that brain bleed was because of stress, eventually, but I wasn't insured at the time, so I'm assuming that's why they never wanted to give me a CAT scan or MRI. And flash forward years later, like I said, everything happens for a reason. Before I was working at the dispensary, I was working for a moving company, Commander Moving in Oakland, California, the Bay Area's #1 moving company. Yeah, shout out to Corel. Well, anyways, I had a great time working there. I had good pay, but unfortunately they didn't offer health insurance. So I had to take a pay cut to go work at the dispensary because they did offer medical insurance, and I knew I needed it because I was suffering from high blood pressure. So I took a pay cut and got the job at the dispensary where they offered Kaiser Gold. It was great insurance, and like I said, everything happens for a reason. So if I wouldn't have hit my head with that baking pan, they wouldn't have checked to see if I had a brain bleed. They were just checking for brain swelling. So having insurance did help me. So that's why they did the CAT scan and MRI finally. And that's when they found out, like, oh, it's not brain swelling. This guy's bleeding. They found the brain bleed in my brain stem. They call it the pons portion. So that's when they put me in a coma because, my blood pressure was really high and it was contributing to the bleed. So in order to calm me down, they had to put me in a coma so I can get my blood pressure level down. And like I said, that coma felt like days. It felt forever, but it was really only a day and a half. But to me, it seemed like I was there forever. And I guess today's theme is that everything does happen for a reason, good or bad. When it happens, we may not, see it as a blessing, but for the longest time, I was, resentful of my disability, of my brain bleed, and I see it as a blessing now. Everything does happen for a reason, and if it wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't, I see life differently now. I appreciate things a lot more than I used to. I'm very grateful for, for a lot of things, my family, my life, Amy. Like, I'm grateful for a lot of things, even though there's some days where I forget these things. I'm human just like everybody else. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that everything does happen for a reason, good or bad. Just let it happen and learn from it. It took me a while to learn from this brain bleed after I pulled my head out of my ass. I was depressed for the longest time. I was not in a good place mentally. I was, like I said, resentful that it happened to me. I was angry at God at one point. I'm like, why me? Like, why this? I was frustrated because I couldn't play music or do the things that I was used to doing. I mean, my brain was telling my body to do stuff, and my body just wouldn't respond because of my disability. Like, that got frustrating, but it took a while for me to accept what had happened to me, and just to remember that everything does happen for a reason, like I said, good or bad. And it took me a while to get there, and I am very grateful to be here again speaking with you guys. I was almost a goner. So today's theme is everything happens for a reason, and just let it happen, folks. Just learn from it. Everything's a learning experience, good or bad. So if you guys are on your own journey, which we all are, I wish you guys well. Thank you for listening to this episode. Check out episode 3 coming out in about 2 weeks. That's going to be a special episode. It's going to be totally different from my story. I'm going to take a break from that. And thanks again for listening. And if you haven't liked or subscribed to my YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. It's Brown, Bearded, and Disabled. God, I didn't think I was ever going to say those words, actually. I get annoyed watching YouTube videos. People are like, hey, if you like my video, go ahead and subscribe and like, so you can keep up to date, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I ended up being that guy now. So go ahead and like, subscribe, share, check it out if you like it. And if you haven't checked out episode 1, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go ahead and catch up. See, this episode makes sense to you. Again, I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to episode number 2. And, yeah, folks, take care of each other, love each other. Amor y paz. Okay, so this week's update's going to be a special one. Next week, I'm participating in an art show in Kennewick, Washington. It's put on by the Tri-City Immigrant Coalition, and the show is celebrating our immigrant community through the arts. I did a new photo series, and it's been 4 or 5 years since I've done a brand new photo series. And mine is called The Taste of Home, which is like the immigrant experience of missing the flavors of their home country. So I ended up picking 4 of my favorite shots, and 4 pictures will be on display on canvases. There'll be tons of other great artists from the community, so come on out and help support the arts, the local artists. There's going to be a couple food trucks out there. The Fast and the Curious. I don't know if they have a "the" in the title, but I just added it. And there's going to be a taco truck there as well. Sorry if I forgot the name. It would probably help if I did get the name. It's called El Taco. So, yeah, come on out. It's going to be poetry, a lot of good art. It's going to be wine because it is a winery. So, come on out. And that address is, let me check out my Google machines here, 421 East Columbia Drive in Kennewick, Washington. Now that's going to be next Saturday, September 7th from 5 p.m. until 8 p.m. So come on out, say hi, and support the arts.